Спасибо большое.
I'm sorry for being late a little bit. Well, school starts late, as we say. I'm very happy that after a long break, we again meet here together. And I'm happy that everybody accepted the invitation. I think everybody will be interested to discuss how financial markets will develop in near future. We are absolutely sure that the main vector will be preserved and our main leader will Mr. Aksakov stay. I hope and I wish Mr. Aksakov to preserve our main vector and to discuss our plan for development of financial market. It depends on you. It depends on you. I think that we will try to be all together and to plan it well. So without further ado, I would love to pass floor to Mr. Aksakov. As it's autumn, we need to discuss the new law that will come in force on the 1st of October. And we will talk about the rights of investors in financial markets and the rights of the citizens. So let's talk about that. Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Moiseev, for your support, for your kind words. As now we are in elective process, I would love to note that there are a lot of very good questions from the audience about financial tools, about the financial system in general. It used to be a talk about the decrease of income and some elective passions, I would put it like this, and about a digital ruble now we start talking. People ask how it will work, and of course it makes me optimistic. It's quite impressive. When I was preparing to this speech, I was asked to talk about protection of the consumers' rights. We see that we have less of social engineering in usage of our citizens' money. It used to be up to 80%, but today it is less than 50%. And it is a result of our joint effort. It is the improvement of financial literacy of our population. 50% is a lot, of course, but people started using financial instruments with more awareness. And of course, we have better instruments to raise the awareness, to improve the decision-making process when anybody purchases financial instruments. We had so-called coolness period for loan agreement, and now it is in force on the insurance market, and people start using this possibility, and they refuse using the tools that they purchased due to different situations on emotional basis or due to reselling. And of course it aims to protect the consumers' rights. Finance ombudsman started working well, and we have more than 400,000 calls. He used to work on the insurance market only, and on the microfinance organization, but he starts working now at the credit and loan market, and we see that it becomes more intensive. And I'm talking absolutely objectively about his work. And I would say that less than half of calls are met, but nevertheless this institute works. We also have special situation with the bankruptcy, and the credit organizations were also quite anxious about it. But I would say that we have found a compromise solution, and physical entities, physical people, can pass now the bankruptcy procedure easier, but financial institutes have now the tools to find and to depict the cheaters, calling them to the court. We also, on the last session, accepted the law that precises the categorization of investors. We imposed prohibition to sell complex financial products, including derivative products, but it's for a certain period of time. It's a must because there were a lot of frauding at this market, and certain limitation that we imposed was due to the fact that certain organizations were selling complex financial products with no due diligence. I think that investors can buy this, will be able to buy this product starting from the 1st of October. There is a window of possibilities, and the practice that we piloted in Czechoslovakia demonstrates that unseasoned investors learning the literature can pass this test. We tested the students in the Republic of Czechoslovakia, and 30% of students passed this testing, and they managed to pass even more difficult questions. Informing of the clients about the agreement conditions on the selling of financial products. The solution is made. The information on the conditions should be provided, and the central bank can require a back purchase if the client was not duly informed. I can continue the list of the solution that protects consumers' rights. And to continue this conversation, what we need to do further on, I think that everything of what is about consumers crediting, we have to be very cautious because any law step is an additional expenditure for a credit organization. It is changing of their software, and I think that it's time for moratorium for changes because many important decisions were made. But we should also remember that it's important to regulate a writing of the accounts. We have to control the bank accounts of the bank recipient, and he needs the information about the client so that people who has their money written off can file an application to the police, and then it will go much faster. It demonstrates that the writing off the money, either from bank or through the bank, is performed very quickly. The fraudsters act very, very quickly. It happens during 30 minutes or 1 hour, and we need to find mechanism to block, to stop, to freeze this money on the account of the recipient bank. And we need to have the register of those who are noticed in the dropping, and those who take this money either through the bank or from bankament. Those who are caught by hand should be prohibited to use these accounts. I think it is a good topic to discussion, but it will help us to combat this evil more efficiently. People will be able to open their account, but only if they come to the credit organization because they were caught in their misdeeds on the market. And of course, migrants is an issue. They open the accounts. They, of course, have cash raised, and of course, we need more of data for opening bank accounts for the foreigners in the Russian Federation. Of course, it should be also set with the information on the boundaries to prevent the fraudsters to come here. It happens sometimes that people are extradited or deported. The person takes the passport of his brother because the faces are very similar. They take the passports and there is a whole business. And we think that we have the full right, we have to have biometric data, we have to follow their movements, we have to follow the movements of the foreigners in our country. Thank you for your kind attention. Yes, thank you very much. We were thinking for a long time how to get there. Citizens on the financial markets, and when they entered the markets, it turned out that they are being fooled there. And it is blaming for us because we should have predicted it, but we had not. But now, thanks God, finally we know that we need to change the situation to provide a quality service. We should not only write good laws and protect the rights, but the service should be efficient, quick, cheap, and comfortable. It can happen only if there is competition. So the next question goes to the main competitor in the Russian Federation, Roman Gorinov, the president of the exchange PGSS, and it is not for the first time that you introduce a new product to a very stable market situation and you rock the market. So I would love to ask you, actually I paid you a compliment, I guessed it was. And I would love to ask you, what is your opinion? Well, it is clear that if it is a short answer, it's a clear answer, but I would love to get a deeper analysis from you. We see a quick consolidation of financial market, not only in Russia, but in many other countries. The mediators becomes hundreds and even dozens. In many countries, we see that when major players enter the new markets, we remember that in the Great Britain, back 20 years ago, how many players there were, and we see that there are much less now. What do you think? Will we have same situation as in big otter facilities, when there had been hundreds and now we have only dozens? Or what do you think? Will there always be some competitors? What is your opinion? Thank you for this introduction. I'm a supporter of the competition, great supporter of the competition, and my mind is that it is a real driver of financial market development. And I'm very satisfied with the fact that the competitors' field in certain segments shrinks, but in others it expands. And the example that we see now when we can create the liquidity center in Russia, when all the other markets are shut, and in the 7 in the morning, it's difficult to find in the world representative prices for Tesla, Apple, Alibaba, and so on. In Russia SPB stock market, you can find it, and it is recognized that we have one of most liquid sites for the trading of international entities, and we can use these competitors' advantages. We have geographic advantage, but on the other hand, during the last years, we created a global step forward to develop market infrastructure, and we created infrastructure that at the moment is one of the best in the world. It's difficult to find a country where you can open the broker's account through an application and start performing different operations with more than 2,000 most liquid financial products in the world. It's very difficult to find it because online identification system that we have, it's difficult to find in the world. You just cannot open the broker's account in few minutes. So on the one hand, we have geographic advantage. On the other hand, we created unique infrastructure and we created local liquidity because it is impossible to create international liquidity without local liquidity. We came to the market with millions of investors who are creating internal liquidity, and it allows us to think and to set tasks not only for the local but for international markets as well. So I think that competition is a great thing, and it's also wonderful that we can use it in different spheres. We can use our competitors' advantage as a state and increase the force of our internal market. Though we trade international actives, we have 80% of deals made without going to the international sites. It is a local market with local added value of Russian infrastructure, with Russian brokers, with our own internal price forming. So I think the competition is great. Same if we talk about emittents. It was a miracle for ourselves how many papers are traded by our citizens. We have more than 1,800 tools and all are being traded. We add every month, like we can add 100 of tools in a month and they are being traded. So there is a huge demand for diversification, for increase of the tool portfolio. We used to live in the very narrow circle of correlated tools, and we thought it is just a fact. But it turned out it can be different, and investors have great demand for diversification. They need to react in any market situation, and they need to go through news, corporate events, and the previous year was very picturesque on this side. Of course, COVID became a catalyst for new investors in the market, and it also demonstrated that investors has very thought-through strategies, intuitive strategies. When pandemic started and the planes do not fly and everybody is in Zoom, like you buy Zoom, you sell plane come by the company. In November, it became vice versa, and everybody went back to the office. You sell Zoom, you buy other companies. So it demonstrates that in general, the structure of the market changed, not only in Russia, but generally in the world, and private investors drives the market more than previously, and it is a unique thing that we should understand and use, because we still have great potential to develop our own market and different other markets.
So we shouldn't be complacent and should worry about the fact that we have too many investors. It's not true. We have a huge potential of development, of increasing the internal client bases, and we have to deal with this. We see that people come to the market and earn money there, and it has become a normal tool for them, a normal lifestyle to improve their lifestyle. And you shouldn't be worried about it, that there will be too many of them. It's wrong. We have to incentivize, enhance the growth of our internal investors, and secondly, we should provide proper conditions to be able that the internal liquidity be the basis to involve clients from other jurisdictions. This year we already evidenced the beginning of this process. So we have now about 100,000 international individual investors, private investors, which of course compared to the Russian investors is too small, but nevertheless the process has already started, and it's clear that the near abroad countries are involved here. And if we take Europe or Israel, the countries which are in our time zone and not very far away, and for them it's convenient to use our trading tools, and we give them this opportunity. From the point of view of the market development, we have to be focused on the growing our internal investor and involving new issuers, not only investors, and provide proper conditions for international investors to come to our market. Thank you very much. Indeed, if we remember the first 10-15 years of the development of our market, IPOs and foreign speculators, and they also used the tools to consolidate assets. There has not been ever a goal to sell out shares and foreigners would buy it back or consolidate packages. There've never been anything you mentioned in your address, the market depth and the liquidity. Well, generally speaking, it makes the market precious. It starts to play the role and to transform savings to investment and to improve the welfare. And I absolutely agree that there couldn't be any market without a massive local investor. Let them do some strange things. You told the examples about Zoom or airlines. But nevertheless, it's clear that these people provide performance for the market, and this market efficiency is being created by this massive involvement. I would like to ask Vladimir about the last mile, which sucks in clients to the market. Roman mentioned digital development. We've built by common efforts quite an efficient structure, but it is not visible to anybody, and now people learned about it and started to use it efficiently. As for the digital tools, the development happened very quickly in the last couple of years. If the brokerage account is easy, but it's not so easy and comfortable to open a normal account. Digital is our future, of course, but the question is whether it's efficient, comfortable for people, and what about security there? And Anatoly mentioned the problem to protect the consumer rights, but avatar can be forged somehow, and the security is key. Thank you. A few words on digital. The last mile has made a certain progress in the last years. We see that modern brokerage services is more like a traditional tool of a trader of sales provided by fintech companies, and many mention that our financial sector, at least not worse than global leaders in developed countries, and sometimes we are even superior to them. And from the central bank, they asked me yesterday how many IT guys work in my bank. I can tell you just the ratio: 3-to-1. Classical business versus to IT, 3 IT guys to 1 business expert. If we compare it in this way. The separate question is, what is business and what is a product? Sorry to interrupt you. This is a hint where to go to get your new job. If you want to be a lawyer or a juror or an economist, you should think that, yes, this is about investment management. This is about the advanced fintech in its classical view, although fintech normally is perceived as something small, but we cannot call it small because the industry is growing. I add a few figures for you at the end of 2020. So now we have around 9 trillion investment products, and I will see this figure double by 2023. At least 9 trillion will come to the market on top. The penetration level is still too low. We finished 2020 at 14%, and to reach this doubling figure, it would be enough to reach 23% of penetration of the total saving amount. Also due to change of price here. Roman cited a very interesting example. By the way, I'd like to stop on it a little bit longer. We all understand that we're living in a situation when inflation risks in the world are quite high, and that correlation, when everybody was looking at shares as shares and assets which are absolutely equal in different changing global macroeconomic indicators, now it has changed. The liquidity is very high in the shares segment, so different segment, different shares, they could absolutely be not correlated. And in order to implement your strategy in a classical situation, when you have a dropping market or growing market, this situation significantly changed. There are shares, for example, who are absolutely protected and behave differently. And coming back now to the question you asked, indeed, without digitalization, we won't go far any further. Without investor rights protection, it's also not possible to work. The market is cleaning itself, understanding that this business is stopping to be a one-off business. It grows from the model, and everybody understands that market companies work first and foremost for market capitalization, and market capitalization behaves differently in so-called situation with recurring revenues. Everyone knows that IT companies can cost huge money, although they don't earn anything in the classical option if we take a look at the financial model, and everyone understands that the stable cash flow, the cash flow on subscription, costs absolutely different money in terms of multipliers other than one-off revenue. Understanding this, and by accepting this philosophy in the investment industry, can change systematically the approach to the client. As a matter of fact, the amount you earn at the moment will have nothing in common with your market capitalization or market value or perception of your shareholders. And this situation, I don't know, at least in our company, in our main competitors I see in the market, is absolutely as it is. You can take a look at the investor presentation. The whole logic is there, and the whole model of business composition is there. Such classical problems disappear when the client had to sell the most marginal product. And this is absolutely clear question of mis-selling. But if we understand that if all people live in a model of the last mile, that the client should be loved and should be built long-term relations with, from the market capitalization costs much more other than achieve something in a moment or sell some structural product without understanding no risks, no client demands, this whole story will work absolutely differently here. On top of that, very important factor is savings, which was given by digitalization. I'm not going to tell you more about the difference between digital business and normal business. Today's brokerage companies are digital business because 99.9% of accounts are opened online, and 99% of services provided by mobile devices or other tools. Direct communication with client is there. Hundreds of thousands of accounts using of artificial intelligence. So once again, this whole thing, starting from the point when the client had a desire to manage their savings through investments till the last mile, is passed in online, as the whole digital business is already there. From the development point of view, just a few words. You were absolutely right by saying that we build up a high-class infrastructure. The development is going on, of course, and Roman mentioned it, and we really managed to maintain the identity and the comfort of our infrastructure by aiding the comfortable last mile. We are absolutely ready to serve foreign investors. We are absolutely ready for that from the point of view of demanding, of expanding this list of the tools, and especially by Russian companies. And I think we will have a special talk about IP in Russia or not in Russia. This is a painful topic for many players. I think the only solution can be there, clear for the market development. But from the point of view of identification issues, comfortability of taxation registration, we have to do a lot for both individuals and legal entities to be able and willing to use our infrastructure, to be willing and be comfortable with opening accounts here, and the internal market and the liquidity which comes not only from the individuals but should also come from legal entities. We can also discuss it separately, what can be done there to provide better image from the institutional point of view. We keep speaking about individuals, but please do not forget about the corporates, about our legal entities, and this issue should be raised and should be addressed. We should make sure that these participants of the market to be developed, they have to play in this market. We can speak a lot about individuals, but only individuals cannot develop the market. We have to develop other institutions, investment funds, pension funds, and so on. We are now in the point, as I believe, where from the value point of view, the main players at the last mile, as I believe, have correct tasks proceeding from market interests, and we are at the point of infrastructural development, which allows to make a qualitative and quantitative leap from this place, both for internal investors, individuals, legal entities, and international investors. Can I add a few words? Yes, I just wanted to pass the floor to Yuri, and not only add, but develop another topic which is of concern for all of us, is IPO not on our grounds. It's clear when in 1996 the IPO was made by Wimpelcom in New York, there were no market, no investors here in Russia. 25 years passed, and we all see now that we have one very well developed market, very good liquidity, and still these majors, they make the IPOs beyond the borders of our homeland. So can we discuss this? You as expert in this area, where shall we fine-tune something to make it work? First and foremost, I'd like to say, we do see the inflow of individuals, quite high inflow, but what they give? They give liquidity, but the pricing itself is due to different kind of investors, due to foundations. What Vladimir mentioned, they should be developed. Our local foundations, we have to have big foundations to make this price. From the point of view of competition and placement, where people place their assets, we see, I have some figures here. If in 2014 the share of Moscow exchange, from the point of view of trading Russian shares with double listing, which has been listed both in Moscow and London, was 55%, Now the share is 82%. We can state now that the financial center of Russian companies moved to Russia completely. We see it on one hand. On the other hand, we see that it's not just moved here because foreigners went away. No, they still work in the Russian market, and our market and our system gave it an opportunity to foreigners to have access to all those liquidity, and they just stopped regulating their position as London. They started to do it here because the liquidity is higher here due to individuals who give an opportunity to regulate this liquidity here in Russia. And as a confirmation, we see the figure. If previously in 2014 it was 40% non-residents trading shares here in Russia, now they take 48% of this share. At the same time, we develop this in area of individuals. We expand time of trading. We give an opportunity to people to trade in the market, get acquainted, get used to it. We train people, and Vladimir absolutely right by saying that we now have the trend when an individual comes, and the individuals come, they come for a long time. They do not try to just earn something big for 6 months and then go. They work, play for a longer period. They try to outplay the interest rate, and banks and brokers should also provide proper products to avoid mis-selling from this point of view. This is important. This is an important topic, and we will discuss marketplaces. Marketplaces should also help us in this regard to provide a huge set of tools which would protect us from mis-selling. As for IPO, I have to tell you the following. IPO, well, you know, there could be different situations in the market, which could be good from the share market, from the leverage market. From the leverage market, it was everything's okay, it is growing. From IPO, we had some weak points. There were no interest from the point of view of the companies to it. They just stopped placing anywhere, not only in our market, but in the recent times, due to the influx of individuals, due to the fact that we managed to transfer big listing volumes from abroad to Russia, and a lot of companies did double listing both abroad and Russia and created this liquidity. And this is a good example of mail.ru, where the liquidity grew by 10 times and 6% accounted for Moscow, which we didn't have before. That all gives an opportunity to see the support from the individuals, from funds, and we hope they will develop to provide better pricing. From the point of view of the market, in the last year, we saw 10 SPOs and ABBs from the beginning of the year, 3 IPO out of them, and we count and expect 10 more till by the end of the year. What's the reason? The reason is that there is interest, and individuals are ready to buy, legal entities are ready to buy, and in principle we have good outlooks. IMC it's a foreign company, by the way. It was completely placed in the Russian market, completely registered here. But take a look at Ozon. There was double listing, both here and on NASDAQ. Another situation. For example, we have such thing as we should trade by a security which is being listed in the foreign platforms. If the company is in London, there are so-called conditional deals. After some time, they're being traded, but IPO can be cancelled. So we have to synchronize our placement to do it in parallel. London and Russia, not only New York and Russia. And what can we do more here to improve it? People got used to work on credit. People took credit, and due to the profit which they got, it was enough for them to reach their business goals. Now, I think there is a time people start to understand that there are absolutely different approaches from the balance management, from company management point of view. And I want to say I think the owners now understand that IPO is not a passive but active tool. Oh, well, you place it in passive, you get me. But if you place security on IPO basis, if you provide a listing, you get a wonderful tool for your transactions. You can make M&As, you can improve your covenants, you can improve your credit positions in the market. Very wide spectrum. I believe there is topic related to the work which is done by banks along with the stock exchange. There are special task forces created who make sure that everything is quickly explained to the business owners. What are the benefits of IPO? And this whole job should be done within 1 year to make sure that the owner gets ready for IPO.
So this work has started, and I think that surely we will soon see the significant growth. And we expect to see about 50 IPOs in the near future. Well, so do you mean that you mean it will be double listing? Yes, some will be with double listing. Why? Why do people do the second listing? Roman says that all the foreign investors are trading in Moscow. In order, if we talk about liquidity, if we see physical entities and they participate in the IPO, and we see that there is 15% of the demand from the local physical people, but to make a good pricing, we need big companies, big funds. And it is important to shift this accent to have these tools for the Russian companies. Let's listen to Vladimir and then to Roman, and then I think I will contradict. Thanks for raising this question. I think that the issue is quite serious and quite comprehensive. And exactly because it's complex and comprehensive, we do not move forward. We're kind of jumping. When market grows, there are good IPOs, good listings, but Russian investors do not get good locations, and new economies goes for IPO to the Western world. The most expensive capital and the best income is made by Western hedge funds. So it is a comprehensive problem. It is not only about infrastructure or comfort or lack of information or that the corporates are not clever or geopolitical risks. When we have some risk, you know the situation with Rusal, those who bought this thing in Hong Kong, when people couldn't do anything with this paper because no broker wanted to work with it. So the issue is very deep, it is very systematic, it requires systemic approach. There should be tax incentive, definitely. Do you remember what happened to RIS? Now we're talking about the number of brokers' accounts, but let's go back in time and let's be frank. If there was not all this education, tax incentives, and all that happened, would we have all these accounts that we have now? Of course we wouldn't. So the question, if we need to continue it now or not, the system finances itself. Well, it is not fashionable to invest anymore. But let's talk honestly. What was done a few years ago, all together, as players, as regulators, I think that those who created it, I think it is one of most serious milestones that became the development of Russian market. Same is here. We're on the threshold with IPO. We have most expensive, most profitable tools. We have the infrastructure, and as we have heard, and is confirmed that everybody has already learned to trade. We manage money of international investors. They all want Moscow stock market, and they will be happy to enter St. Petersburg stock market as well. They want to get this DMA. They can trade here. If we talk about MSCI index, there are more of Russian securities, and all the softwares of the programs are kind of artificially dried out. And let's talk about the last argument. Chinese are not full. We can think that they are doing something wrong. And if somebody says, you can go to the Hong Kong stock market, they understand. They do understand why they do it. And our huge task is as well to preserve, to save here liquidity, to save here infrastructure. I'm talking about, for example, new companies. Look, for the new companies are listed, the companies with the biggest capitalization. If they are listed there, then all these talks about capitalization of our market, it will have no sense, because this company will not be here. So we have definitely to have some regulatory measures, incentives, education. If we just say, let's take and move one piece of this jigsaw, it will not happen. And we should raise the awareness, Well, there are companies of new economy, and they have double listing. I will comment on it. I will be more liberal than my colleagues, though I, in general, agree with my colleagues. Yes, we are on the threshold, and we can increase the number of trading tools, and I think that we should not set a task like 50, but 200, 300, 500 lists, because physically we do not have enough of companies. We need to increase them significantly. And I think that, first of all, we should set the task that Russian companies are listed, not their foreign affiliates. And I do share the idea that we need to remove the limits of DR program dosage. We'd better put the local securities and not some foreign affiliate. And we have already understood that we can use international market to create our own liquidity. And we are not that scared about the listing of DR, because we can do it for the Russian investors. But to have a Russian listing here with all our victories, I do agree with Yuri that Russian national investors and, first of all, our retirement funds should buy Russian entities on the IPO, because if they cannot buy Russian companies for listing, who else will buy it? Let's look at Poland example. Many years ago, Poland created local market using retirement foundations. They lost it because they have not involved physical entities, and they lost all liquidity. But in the beginning of the market, it was a huge market. I remember when we went to Ukraine, they said we will go to Poland because they buy all the securities there. The Russian retirement foundations should buy Russian entities, and Russian emittents should enter Russian stock markets. We think that they do not have good quality, that they have wrong corporate management, but the state should stipulate the entering of these companies into the market, and then we will have a long-term effect because we will involve the resources, we will have secondary entities turnover in the market, we will definitely have the payback of it. Let's have incentive, let's have subsidies so that the state sponsors the emittents entering the market. Then we will not have these problems. Why do we have to let the physical people to buy it? Why do we spend money? But we can spend money and we will have emittents of high quality and we will not be worried that investors buy them. Well, I think that you answered 3/4 of my question. There's still 1/4 of my question. If I'm not wrong, from 2015, through all these international clearing organizations, we have the access to the liquidity of any foundation. And when Russia lists their bonds, so anybody can come and buy a share. Why do they go there if they can come here? Like in New York, there is a huge demand that will never come to the Russian market. There is a huge number of foundations. Well, of course, never say never, but there are lots of them who will not come to the Russian market. Let's be clear about the situation where we live. For issuers of a good quality, the demand on the international market is higher than on local market. Though his account is in the local depository, the fact of listing at the Russian or St. Petersburg market is a problem. Is this a problem? Actually, no. Of course, they do not have, they all have the custodies in JP Morgan or for the international mediators who have the access to the Russian stock market, Moscow stock market. So there is no one solution. As Roman says, our foundations should buy it. But if our retirement foundation starts to buy IPO, where in this story it is as it was 5 years ago. Whatever we're talking about, we said that it's all great. FinTech, we're still back there 5 years ago. And if we say that, like if we cannot trade if we have this for 2 days, the clients kind of or IPO and they are looking at the screen, controlling what's happening to their securities. Lots of issues are not thought through yet, and what Roman speaks about, like somebody in the US cannot buy it, well, if you buy Russian company and Russian share, somebody says, I have risk. Well, either people have not read the good textbooks or they have the same risk because they have these ruble revenues. It is not important what is the currency level, the currency market now. So we have lots of phobia. Here phobia, there phobia, everywhere phobia. And if we look at this problem altogether, we will definitely resolve it. But frankly speaking, there is no problem to list a company here if they have investors here, but it's my humble opinion. Okay. That's clear for me. There are a few more issues that I would love to discuss. Of course, we heated each other and we can discuss it for a long time, but I think that we can ask the medical doctors. We definitely need to have here the representatives of the Ministry of Healthcare, but let's switch to a new topic. We see that the biggest value are market investors. At the moment, the biggest value are market investors. When we had mega regulator, and we started talking about licensing of the products, and we started moving towards licensing of the products. We have cross-product services now. When the client, wherever he comes to the market, this somebody gets all the spectrum of the finance services. And you do not have to go to many other companies, and we have kind of marketplace where we have horizontal cooperation. We will have the total mixture of it all. Like we used to have different 20 type of licensing in insurance. It's like we have fences everywhere, fences. Do you think we have removed these fences and everybody works wherever they want, or is it different? I wanted to talk first about the banks as leaders. I see that banks are mostly there as the representatives of bank. I will start with Mr. Basmanov. Well, we have to recognize that marketplace of financial services was inevitable after trading teapots and food. It was just obvious. We should have had the window glasses of comparison, the window glasses of deals, and we have very popular services in Russia such as Sravni.ru, Compare, and Banki.ru, and these windows of comparison has not broken the business models, because as colleagues have already mentioned, the representatives of brokers business made a lot of service online. After the client has opened the account, has passed the identification, they can do nearly everything online, and the platforms of comparison is one of the sources of the lead generation. But as marketplace is thought through by the state, it's an absolutely new client path to purchase the tool or service, where we have more similarities to the stock exchange mechanism. It is not only the choice of the best price, it is a key turn solution. And when we have the deeper marketplaces, where we have a deep integration with financial institutes, when we can not only choose the price, but also to seal the deal totally. Would this instrument take place in the financial market? Difficult to say, because we're only in the beginning of the way. Yes, the banks will come to the marketplaces because the clients will be there, they will try there, there will be supply, and it is obvious that if it is a standard product, it's obvious how the market will react. But there are many open questions how the mechanism will work, and what will be the difference, and if it is going to be the better thing than bonds with the fixed liquidity or fixed profitability. If we talk about a yearly or 2 years bonds, the bank does not spend money for insuring. It uses the deposits of the marketplace, and it still have these expenditures. There are many similar mechanisms for deals, but it would be the question to the market, to the regulating, because for the client it would be absolutely the same work, whether I buy bond, whether I buy the deposit, but the rate will be different, of course. It's interesting what will be happening to it, and we, of course, will follow it, and we will make some possibilities. Of course, it would be one more challenge to the existing physical formats of work, and we will have less and less necessity to go and get some physical consultation. And of course, we will have more and more changes. And the third point is very interesting. Is the developing of credit product sales with their lots of differences, and the marketplaces will definitely make the banks to open the statistics of refusals. The banks will better understand the risks of IBDs, and it will be better for the consumer. The credit market will be more transparent, more competitors, and it's difficult to say how it will influence the risk.
How the behavior of clients will change, how they will choose what they like, it's a very interesting question. What else can I add here? I think a very interesting change will happen in pricing, because marketplaces will earn commission on commission, and part of margin would go over to this side. Today, the revenue for banks they earn by attracting clients. It's not only a source for dividends, but also for investments and for risks. If some part of the margin would flow over to marketplaces, and the higher market force they would gain, the higher will be their margin. What would happen to the risk appetite, to investment in the technology development and those balances which make the service happen? That's the question we cannot answer yet. First, it will be regulated by the market and then by the state. Thank you. Thank you, Igor. Mr. Jurgens, moving over to you. Roman told us about liberals, and you wouldn't break me here. Yes, the symbol of liberalism in the fashion market is you, and not only in the financial markets. Also, first, I'd like to comment this mixture of everything. First, we separated, now we're mixing, also in terms of insurance. And secondly, we kept thinking that our market is not regulated, but the insurance market is over-regulated. I think this long history of regulation as in the insurance market is a great story, and sometimes if boring, we cannot find it anywhere. Well, what shall we do now? Shall we release some tights, right? I would like to present. Mr. Aksakov said, give us a small moratorium. You accepted so many things which protects consumer. Let us now step back and evaluate all that. Because this consumer is so overprotected, you even cannot offer a new product. Before to offer the community, you should get hundreds of permits. That's the first thing. The second thing, the innovations that I wanted to comment on today is, for example, they want to give us a single license for non-state pension funds and insurance companies. On one hand, it would sound beautiful because the access is easier now and the service is easier, but on the other hand, this is also the enlargement and simplification. If it's simplification, it means then losing some individual qualities of the product, which are absolutely necessary. So far, it was not done in the world anywhere. We do this experiment. This is good, of course. But on the other hand, if we take ecosystems which appear right now, it would mean monopolization. It would be inevitable. Enlargement and monopolization. Our concern is a little bit less as non-state pension funds. I see here some colleagues here in the room. They can correct me. After these years of reforming, when they were bitten, black and blue, enlarged, all these funds were frozen. And Roman, I support you as my brother, and well, how can an IPO be possible for these funds? They could even survive. They are still being frozen, as far as I understand. Their funds being frozen in those non-governmental pension funds. And when we say about additional regulatory or additional innovation. Let us think and discuss it first with market sectors. We're not so ingeniously developed to start enlarging even more, given that we have already one elephant in the market, Sberbank, who is starting to pile pressure on everybody. Well, let us take a short break and let's think. This is concerning our markets. And since you were criticizing me for liberalism, colleagues, it was discussed very well here how well is our technological development goes in brokers and in stock exchanges. In 2020, 60 billion is the churn of capital. It's very high. In 2019, we have the development in the economy under pressure. All these stories like Bering Vostok, it's a country risk and a currency risk and regulatory risk. And when you ask foreign investors who try to come here, why do not come? We've been 10 years not paying dividends in minority risks, and how can we call it? So, colleagues, when we speak about a holistic model of developing our investment markets, of course, we made huge leaps in digital. We made huge leaps in understanding how our manager work and what kind of specialists and experts we trained. But the country is far from being a perfect situation when we can solve all other problems with one digital. But honestly speaking, it's not like that. So you hit my painful point with dividends, Mr. Jürgen. State companies, unlike private companies, they almost all pay. This creeping state influence, there will be trouble for you. What countries overcome crisis with 70% of small and medium prices? We have a creeping state influence and state owning. We had 300 companies, none of them. Now we have all of them state-owned. Due to sanctions, Russian national reassuring, I'm not going to call every others, it is all growing and growing. And the regions are there behind them. So I'm not going to pile upon you all my internal things, but through ecosystem, this creeping coverage is the threat we should stand against. Well, sorry, Mr. Jürgen, as what was said, they all stealing, right? And if there were so many deceived insurers and shareholders, there wouldn't be this problem of creeping it. We get claims every year, 40% minus claims every year on us. So please do not tell this to me. Well, in principle, I am responsible for privatization as the curator of Rosimущество, and our program is being expanded. So in general, I agree with you in terms of reducing the state share, and we have huge plans in this regard. But look, well, the trend is obvious. Probably we had 100 companies out of 3,000, so they get less claims. That's why. So please agree that in the recent 5 years, I would call the epoch of bankruptcy and sanations. How many cases did we have when it was turned out that there are no assets and everybody is far away? You impose a very dangerous discussion if you analyze what was 5 years after what event, and how the state offended, and how we got into this bulwark, which is under siege from all the countries. Rosgosstrak was not related to any political things. Sorry for that. We can, of course, call you a political martyr, but it's not. It wouldn't be true. Sorry for that. This discussion is deliberately going in this direction. Didn't I prove my position? Yes, well, absolutely. I now can keep silent. At Hegel, taught us there were always fight from the part of the state and the private property. Minfin and SNB is doing good, but we are going far beyond these two organizations, philosophy of which is being shared by us and is being pressured. We have also other agencies which make a slightly different picture out of our market, and as a result of this pure churn of capital from Russian Federation, whatever technologically brilliant we would look is a fact. That's what I wanted to tell you to prove my liberalism, and now I keep silent. You shouldn't prove your liberalism, we all know them very well. I have one more question about ecosystem, and a little bit provoking. I promised to give the floor to our colleague, Anna Kuznetsova from Rossельхозbank. She's not on the panel. I promised to give you the floor. Please give her the microphone. Microphone, no microphone. I'd like to comment on two things. First about IPO, and second one on the help and role of individuals in the bonds market. And as for IPO, it would be good that Russian companies would do IPO in Russia and do it from the Russian legal entity. To make foreign investors buy these securities, we should include the international aspect, and leaflets should be done in English, and also a roadshow should be organized in all jurisdictions. We used to have these deals previously and were perfectly organized, and the share of foreign investors in IPO was huge. But this is only about big companies. If we take small companies, foreign investors buy them reluctantly. That should be a proper level of average capitalization. And if we speak about mid and small companies, mid-sized and small companies, here we should only count on the internal investor. We cannot count on the retail investors, and whatever comments would be voiced for pension funds. Pension funds is one of the anchors for all IPOs, Russian and international. The practice is that these funds are active players in the market. There should be the industry of collective investments, shared investments be developed, and investments in the second and third tier. Now a few words about securities market. The share of individuals in placement of corporate segment made 28%. Last year it was 18%. And we have transactions for Rosagrokultura, Maxim Telecom, where the share of individuals in the placement was higher than 50%. And individuals accept risks very good and enter tier 2 and 3 very good. Apart from all the exercises with taxation, there was low start from deposits. The physical person is used to risks and high revenues. So the role of individuals in building up the second tier and third tier securities market is huge. What does it give us for us as Selkos Bank? The share of APK is less than 1%. This is a huge imbalance since these revenues do not correlate with the feedstock market. It provides the opportunity to get the diversified portfolio and some opportunities for the development to the investor. The majority of these issuers are retailers with their brands, and even the first tier for them, Cherkizova, Miratorg and others, give them a higher interest than the first tier of fixed stock sector and the leading banks. So I think this role is important. Yes, we have some imbalance in terms of the attraction of capital, but we should look in the area of privileged shares and converted securities and bonds. Probably there could be drivers for the development of our risk, of our market. APK is a good basis for small and medium enterprises. I'd like to ask a blitz question to you. Ecosystems were mentioned here. I heard one statement from one of the managers of one of the competing ecosystems of ours. I'm not going to tell you the name. You would guess, I think. The ecosystem which is built in the Russian market, this is a coercive ecosystem. And it's clear why it is needed for people who build them, for cross sales, for anything else. I'm not going to repeat myself. But what about the consumers? Do they add some value here or not? Just a few words, one or two sentences. Igor Yurievich, please. So let's start from the liberal wing. We should look at the regulation of ecosystems. Until recently, we didn't have any experience. As far as I understand, the central bank make trouble for the big elephant, but the big elephant answered adequately. When they would be regulated, it would be good for the simple investor. But generally speaking, my answer is no. Konstantin? There were a lot of discussions about ecosystem regulation focused on the limitation of their market power in terms of their extensive growth involving new services. Let's limit it like that or like this. I'd like to pay attention to the other part. The client, the player of the ecosystem is becoming dependent on it somehow, because the question of its positioning, of its ratings and the value proposition start to influence the sales and the revenue much stronger than the direct marketing efforts. And the issue of discrimination of these participants who get the regulated access to the last mile is really key in terms of the right protection, and all these issues in principle are not being discussed and not regulated. And it looks like what happened with anti-monopoly regulation in retail chains, when the legislation was built to the benefit of small producers, protecting their right to fight for the shelf space. In ecosystems, it is not discussed, and I think this is the regulation which should emerge as the protection against monopolies. Roman? In my understanding, the key issue of fair competition and non-using and utilization of opportunities which are there to suppress this competition. If this development happened in the equal and fair competitive field, it would be good. The competition is not very fair, so as a result, we could arrive at another form of monopoly which would not be good. Well, you know Yandex Taxi. Did you see how tariffs are growing? But they do grow, and this monopolistic premium is constantly getting higher and higher. This is the issue of fair competition. I would comment it. I didn't use Yandex Taxi. I used another aggregator, but it disappeared, and now probably the prices went up. Yes, that's another confirmation, you see. I also use a different aggregator. Prices are not growing there. I just offer you an opportunity to change your aggregator and follow up prices which company sets. An ecosystem is an objective story. It is being developed objectively. I agree with Igor that regulation should be introduced. I do not agree that it's not discussed, because there is a report of the central bank, the first version. The second version is now under development, and the central bank is concerned of the violations of fair competition. Entering, exiting the ecosystem is not so easy. Let us discuss, and I invite you to Sochi. Konstantin, we will have a special session at the Bank Forum about ecosystems, and of course, in the point of it, in the light of the main attention is central bank, and you can provide your arguments there. Yuri, I think there are two forms of marketplaces, as an ecosystem, and the second form of the marketplace is a comparison. I think that the comparison form gives more competition, it provides more choice, and they are not limited to the inclusion of ecosystems as the participants, and they provide the opportunity to see this competition. I think the neutrality, which is the main indicator by law, the inability to replace advertising, ability to make the right choice, to avoid coercion but provide comparison. This is a good area, a good trend where we could go and get this real, fair, competitive pricing.
Well, I think we have to understand, well, why we see that everybody tries to create everything in one place. We have a problem with cross-identification, and this client's path is just broken when you have to jump from one legal entity to the another. And you can heal it only if you put everything into one place. Then the journey of possibilities versus benefits probably will not work. Probably we should not put everything into one place. If we have a good partnership, if we improve it, if we improve the regulation, understand that the license and response for of it. I will not dramatize the story, because it's all very simple. In English, it is called cost of customers acquisition. Lots of money is sent in air. And sometimes we see good services aggregates. And if we look at it, and if we look at the cost of acquisition of the client, we'll see that there is a very simple example. I had a call yesterday with my Chinese partnership. In 3 years, together with American companies, they created ETF for $12 billion, and I'm sitting and thinking, who will buy? Who will buy our Russian ETF? I have this choice every day. But they have created, the Chinese have created this partnership with very clear division. They created it. Why I said this example? Because in Russia can happen the same. If there is no problem, how much does it cost to acquire the customers, we will have this entrepreneur spirit, and it is obviously dropping when you are not a stakeholder anymore. If we have 100% participation of one ecosystem or two ecosystems, the entrepreneur spirit will drop. If we decrease the cost of customers acquisition and give them possibility to develop the product and make it best in class, obviously it will be better than anything in the system that follows some stake pattern. Well, thank you very much. I said it would be a provocation, because everybody for Mr. Aksakov are players who create ecosystems around them. And it's obvious that, of course, we care about service providers, and I heard less care about people who will buy it. Well, I try to make it sharper, but in the very beginning of our discussion, Roman mentioned that there are many providers well, you put it short, but I remember that the client lives for 6 months and he found himself in debt. I understand now that we cannot work like this anymore. We understand that we have to take care of the client, and we should remember about it when we create ecosystems. Otherwise, the client will rebel. He will pay by cash, he will stop cars with a thumb up, and so on. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. But if we talk about holistic model, when we were students of the Moscow State University in the political economy course, what we discussed now, the economy of finance cannot be considered without policy. As you're my old colleague in many banks of our youth, I know that you share my point of view. Though mainly in economy than in policy. But nevertheless, we do not have time for questions, unfortunately. I think we know each other very well and we can communicate very well. And I'm going to the row. We have the big emperor's crown. You can go and see it. And it is even better than we have in the Diamonds Foundation. You can go to the jewelry exhibition.
Ты